Hey guys, in this tutorial we learn about tone curves. So you might have actually seen it in Snapseed or on Lightroom and wondered what it is. So tone curves are an important tool which is used in almost all major editing applications. It can give you a lot of control in editing an image and it can help you make quick changes once you've mastered it. Okay, so have a look at this image. I'll use this black and white gradient image to teach the basics about tone curves. After this we'll look into a real life example. Okay, so look at this image. On the left side we have pure black, and then we have shadows. In the middle we have the midtones. Right side we have the white, which is the pure white. So we have this sort of gradient which goes from black to white. So if we consider the values of the pixels that make up this image, the left side, which is pure black, will have a value of 0, and the right side, which is pure white, will have a value of 255. So you have values that go from 0 to 255, and the middle is 128, which is mid gray. So now take a look at the tone curve. So we'll go to curves. Okay, so this is the tone curve. So it has two axes, right? The x-axis and the y-axis. So both the x and y axis have values that go from 0 to 255. Okay, so this here is 0, this is 255 on the x-axis, and on the y-axis similarly you have 0 here and 255 here. The leftmost part of the x-axis, which is 0, it represents the blacks, and the rightmost part, 255, represents the whites. So similarly on the y-axis also, the bottommost part represents the blacks and the topmost part represents the whites. Okay, so right now what I'm going to say is very important, alright? So the bottom x-axis represents the actual values of the pixels in our image, alright? And the vertical axis represents the values to which we want to map the pixels to. Okay, so by default the tone curve is just a straight line where each value in x-axis is mapped to the same value in y-axis. Okay, for example, 0 is mapped to 0, 1 is mapped to 1, 2 is mapped to 2, 128 is mapped to 128, and similarly 255 is mapped to 255. So right now what we have here by default is that the input and the output is exactly the same. Okay, so this part was really important, so just pause it and rewind it till that's clear. So now what we can do is we can edit these values to make changes to our image. Alright, so take a look what happens if I change the leftmost black pixels and drag it up to the top. Okay, so you can see that the blacks are getting lighter and lighter. Now it's gray. I take it all the way to the top and it has become white. Okay, so now we have mapped all the pixels in the x-axis to 255 and this has caused the entire image to become white. Alright, so now what happens if I take the rightmost pixels, the white pixels, and I drag it down? The entire image has, the right side of the image has become black. So what I've done right now is actually invert the image by changing the tone curve. Okay, now take a look what happens if I map both the ends to the middle. The entire image has become gray, right? So what I did right now is change all the values to 128. Take a look at this real life image. We'll see how we apply the same concepts to a real life image. So I've opened this beautiful picture and we'll start making some edit to it using tone curves. Okay, we'll go to curves. What if we add a point in the center and drag it up? The entire line has become a curve and it gets dragged along with this point and it forms a sort of a curve and it brightens up the entire image quickly. We can also do it the opposite way, darken the image also. Okay, so now what if we don't want to brighten the entire image and we just need to change the highlights and leave the dark and shadows as it is? So what we do here is we add 3 points. Okay, so we add 1 point to the shadows, 1 to the midtones, 1 to the highlights. Now I just change the highlights. I drag it up, down. See what happens to the image. Only the bright parts get changed and the dark parts remain as it is. So what if I want to change the exact opposite way? I drag the shadows down, up. Only the dark part gets changed. The bright parts remain as it is. Okay. So basically these anchor points can be used to selectively change the values instead of changing the entire image. So we can, with these 3 anchor points, we can form an S curve, which is one of the most common uses of a tone curve. And basically it can add a lot of contrast and a beautiful punch to a flat image very easily. So we just add these 3 points over here and we take the highlights a little bit up and the shadows a little bit down. Right? Have a look at the before and after. We have added a beautiful punch to the image. It looks much better now. And it's all done with a basic S curve. So the reason why we call it an S curve is because it looks like an S. Have a look at this. So another quick use of curves is to add a matte vintage look to an image. This is done sometimes to achieve a vintage film camera type look where the blacks are crushed to a more lighter value and it gives a matte look to the image. So basically we make the same S curve. So the difference here is we take the blacks a little bit higher. See what happens to the blacks when I take it higher. The blacks start getting a little bit more muted and gives a matte look to the image. So this type of edit is pretty common on Instagram, where you want to achieve a film camera type look, a vintage look. Or have a look at the before and after. So basically you can do everything very selectively and control the highlights, shadows, darks and white separately using curves. Okay, so I hope all of you have understood curves, and I hope whatever I said till now had made at least some sense to you. So curves is a pretty important feature used by photographers in their images, and it's present in almost all major editing tools, both on desktop and on phone. I use Snapseed over here just because it's totally free on Android and iOS and it's easily accessible to everyone. Thanks for watching, guys. Do try it out for yourself. Have a good day.